If you're charged with DWI in Texas, then your driver's license is subject to suspension. In this video, I want to talk about 3 things to know if you're in this situation. My name's Trey Porter. I'm a criminal defense attorney in Texas. We have a lot of info here on the YouTube channel, as well as on our website in the articles that we have. So knowledge is power. Check them out, read the articles. I hope you get the answers that you need. Let's get into it. If you're charged with DWI in Texas, your license is in trouble. And there are 3 big things I want you to know. Number 1 is you're very likely going to get a suspension on the front end. And by the front end, I mean the front end of your case. Before you even really get into it with the judge or the prosecutors or anything like that, the Department of Public Safety in Austin, they take what's called administrative action to suspend people's driving privileges. This has its origins in the Implied Consent Law here in Texas. And the Implied Consent Law, without getting too far into it, it is simply saying that all of us that are drivers in Texas, we have given our consent to all of law enforcement to give a specimen of our breath or blood if we're asked. So if you're driving in Texas, you're pulled over by the police and they ask you to give a specimen, there is an implication of consent that already exists that you will give it. And if you don't give it, if you refuse, then there's an automatic penalty for an administrative suspension. So I know that's a lot, but again, if you've been charged with DWI in Texas, you very likely are going to be incurring a driver's license suspension just through that administrative action from DPS. Now, we all have a right to due process. So you have a right to challenge that suspension. And that's number 2 to know of. Now, I'm here to tell you that statistically, it's unlikely that your challenge is going to bear fruit and reverse the administrative suspension. Why is that? Well, the main reason is because the only thing you're really challenging is whether or not you refused, which typically is not a subjective deal. Typically, there's going to be evidence in the record that the officers have that clearly show whether you refused or you did not refuse. But you should still always do the hearing. Always request the hearing. And of course, this is done through counsel. But always request the hearing. It's called an administrative license revocation hearing. The acronym that you'll hear used pretty regularly, or you'll see if you do some more searching on the internet, is ALR. Always do the ALR hearing because you get an opportunity to question the officer under oath about some details associated with the arrest. So if the officer says that they pulled you over for speeding, and then in the ALR hearing, they say they pulled you over for some other reason, well, now there are conflicting reasons, and your attorneys can use this down the road when they're trying to get your case dismissed at the trial court level. So it's an important thing to do. And then number 3, the third thing to know if you're facing a DWI in Texas about your driver's license is that no matter what, you can drive legally. So breathe easy about that. A lot of people ask the same question over and over. I can't lose my driving privileges. What am I going to do? Well, the answer is in Texas, you can get what's called an occupational driver's license. This is a temporary license that the government can issue to people that essentially lets you drive for all of the things that you need to drive for. The only people who are disqualified from this are commercial drivers. So if you earn a living driving a large commercial vehicle, you're going to have to sit on the sidelines during the period of suspension, and it's almost always 1 year. But for everyone else, through an attorney, you can get what's called an occupational license. You can take the kids to school, you can pick everybody up from practice, you can take your parents to doctor's appointments, you can do the things that you need to do for your life, and to a certain extent that you want to do for your life. An occupational driver's license can be used to go to the grocery store, to go to the gym, to go to church, to do things that are important, but maybe not necessarily life or death. So be confident that you're still going to have an avenue to drive legally. So to recap, the 3 big things that you need to know if you're facing a DWI in Texas as it relates to your license are: number 1, it's almost certainly going to be suspended. Number 2, you do have an opportunity to contest that suspension, and you always should. And number 3, you will be able to drive legally with an occupational license during that period of suspension. So those are the big 3 keys to know as it relates to your driving privileges if you're charged with DWI in Texas.